Hello everyone, thanks again for tuning in. Let us continue in our study in the book of Matthew chapter 11. We're discussing what the Lord's yoke is and the burden. So let's read chapter 11 of Matthew verse 29 and 30. It says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." We discovered that a yoke is bringing two things together for one common cause. Now Jesus said to take his yoke and learn from me. So you know that on his end he's the teacher, and on our end we're the student. Now what are the things that the Lord is going to teach us, which is so great? He's going to teach us, one of the things he will teach us in the process of taking his yoke. His yoke is to teach us how to do the Father's will. In the process of us learning to keep that first, you see, the whole thing with our everyday life is to wake up ready to do the Father's will. That means that something may be interrupted in that day. You may have plans to go to church, or you may have plans to go to a certain restaurant, but the Lord, the Father, will may be for you to do something else. So that teaches us to be sensitive to the Spirit's leading. And that's really what doing the Father's will. There's someone that you should speak to today. And if your plans are different than the Father's plan, then because your spirit is born again, he leads us just like he did Jesus. Jesus had a purpose for going to the well. He had a purpose for crossing over and going to different places. The Father's plan was being fulfilled. There were people that Christ needed to minister to and deal with. Likewise, it's the same for us. So we must keep the yoke around us to stay connected to Christ and go on his leading and doing the Father's will. So the yoke is simply doing the Father's will. Now Jesus said, I will teach you how to do that. First, you have to be sensitive to my leading in your spirit. In the process of us determined to do the Father's will, there's something else that will be built in us as far as coming out of us. And that thing is that he would teach us how to be meek. And he would teach us how to be lowly in heart. Now, to be meek simply means that we would not resist any opposition. You see, if we feel led to go a certain route, even though there will be opposition, you won't resist it, because it's the Father's will that we go down this route. And we can see firsthand that Jesus didn't resist anything. He suffered he suffered in the flesh the consequences for doing the Father's will, but he did it willingly. He did it with no hesitation. And this is something that I feel impressed in my heart that the Lord wants us to do also, is to be meek, to be ready to deal with any opposition, and to be lowly in heart. It simply means that he had no self-esteem for himself. That don't mean that he didn't have confidence in who he is. He was the Son of God. He didn't have to prove that to anyone. But what it means is that he had no goals for himself except doing the Father's will. His living, his life is expressed in doing the Father's will. Every day he woke up with his willingness to do the Father's will. That was the number one desire of his. So the burden is just simply carrying out the will. You know how when something is on your heart and it's like a burden for you to minister to someone or to pray about a situation, and then soon as you do, uh, the burden is gone. It's lifted. So the yoke is easy for us to take of the Lord because um, he delivered us from the yoke of being joined to the law. So compared to being yoked to the law and being yoked to him, his yoke is easy. It's one simple command. I'm going to teach you how to do the Lord's will, and in the process, you will become meek, and in the process, you will become lowly in heart. And the burden is light because every time we fulfill God's will, and a burden is on our heart to do God's will in a particular matter, once that will is done, the burden is lifted. So I pray that something I said has blessed you. Thank you again, and God bless.